Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are diving into the world of professional liability insurance in 2025. But this isn't going to be like a boring insurance seminar or anything like that. We're going to unpack why this is something that you should care about, especially if you're offering professional services. We're going to be talking about social inflation and the labor crunch, AI, cybersecurity. We've got a ton of research and insights to help you navigate this stuff. So,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, and it's really interesting because while the market's been pretty stable lately with premiums kind of staying flat, things are going to get a little bit more shaky in 2025 for people who are providing professional services.
Okay, so before we get into the really complicated stuff of 2025, could you give us a quick overview of what professional liability insurance is and why it's so important?
Sure. Professional liability insurance is sometimes called errors and omissions insurance. And it's essentially a safety net for professionals. So we're talking anyone from doctors and lawyers to consultants and accountants. It protects them financially if they make a mistake on the job and get sued for it, even if it wasn't intentional. So think negligence or errors in judgment.
So it's basically a safeguard against making mistakes, which everybody does.
Yeah, exactly. And it's becoming even more important because the landscape of risk is changing so quickly, especially in 2025.
Right. Let's talk about that changing landscape. You mentioned social inflation earlier. What exactly is happening there?
Well, social inflation is more than just the price of groceries going up. It's this trend where juries are increasingly siding with individuals against companies,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to corporate wrongdoing. And this can lead to massive payouts and lawsuits. Some people are calling these nuclear verdicts those exceeding $10 million. dollars.
Wow, $10 million. Are these nuclear verdicts really that common?
They're becoming more frequent. And it's something that professionals across industries are starting to pay more attention to. You remember that case against Company X a few months ago? They had to pay amount in damages. That's a perfect example of social inflation.
So what you're saying is that this anti-corporate sentiment, along with these huge payouts, it's creating a much riskier environment for anyone who's providing professional services. Like, even a small mistake could have major consequences.
Exactly. And it's not just about the money either. Think about the damage to your reputation that can come with a high-profile lawsuit. Even if you win in court, the negative publicity can really hurt.
Right. So social inflation is definitely something to watch out for. But then there's the labor crunch. That's been a big topic for a while now. How does that play into all of this?
It's a really interesting connection, one that many businesses aren't really aware of. A lot of industries are having trouble finding enough workers, which means that companies are having to overwork their current employees or hire people with less experience. And that creates a situation where professional liability claims are more likely to happen.
I see what you mean. More pressure and less experience is probably going to lead to more mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. A doctor who's working double shifts is more likely to misdiagnose a patient. Or a brand new accountant might make a big mistake on a client's taxes. These mistakes are usually unintentional, but they can have big consequences, and they can open the door to lawsuits.
It sounds like a vicious cycle. The labor shortage puts more pressure on workers, that leads to more errors, and then that translates into more professional liability claims.
You got it. It's a hidden risk that a lot of professionals don't even realize they're facing.
Okay, so we've got social inflation, which is making lawsuits more common and the payouts bigger. And then we've got the labor crunch, which is increasing the chances of those mistakes happening in the first place. That's kind of scary. But on top of all of this, we've got AI. It feels like it's impacting every industry these days. Where does AI fit into all of this?
That's where things get really interesting. AI has a ton of potential to make things easier and improve service quality, but it also brings in new challenges to professional liability.
That's kind of surprising. Isn't AI supposed to make things more efficient and less prone to errors?
You'd think so, right? But here's the thing. AI still relies a lot on humans. Imagine a financial advisor who relies entirely on AI to manage a client's portfolio. What if the AI makes a bad decision that loses the client a bunch of money? The client could argue that the advisor was negligent for relying too much on AI, especially without understanding how it works or overseeing its decisions.
So it's not the AI that's the problem, it's how people are using it. If they're not careful, it could be considered negligent to rely on AI. It's like having a fancy new tool, but not having the instructions.
That's a good way to put it. It's powerful technology, but it comes with a new set of responsibilities and potential problems. Professionals need to be aware of this as they start using AI more and more.
All right, so we've talked about social inflation, the labor crunch, and now AI. It's a lot to keep up with. But there's one more thing that we haven't mentioned yet, It seems like it's lurking in the background of every industry. Cybersecurity.
Right, cybersecurity. The threat that never seems to go away. It's a huge part of the professional liability picture. And in 2025, it's more important than ever to understand how cybersecurity and professional liability are connected.
Because professionals deal with a lot of sensitive information, right? That makes them prime targets for hackers.
Exactly. Think about it. Lawyers with confidential case files, accountants with financial records, healthcare providers with patient data. It's a gold mine for cybercriminals. And if professionals aren't taking cybersecurity seriously, they're leaving themselves open to attacks.
And I bet the whole work from home thing has made things even more vulnerable.
Absolutely. Remote work has made the lines between personal and professional networks blurry. And that's created more ways for hackers to get in. And if a cyber attack does happen, the consequences can be terrible. We're not just talking about business disruptions and bad press. We're talking about lawsuits from clients whose data was stolen.
So now professionals have to worry about cyber attacks potentially leading to lawsuits on top of everything else.
It can feel like that sometimes. But the good news is that there are things professionals can do to lower their risk. And that's what we'll talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
Hold on to that thought, because we're just getting started. We'll be right back after a quick, just kidding, we're diving right back in. All right, so we've talked about some of the major challenges that professionals are facing in 2025. It's a lot. But the point isn't to scare anyone, it's to make sure you have the information you need. Knowledge is power, after all, right?
I agree completely. Knowing what you're up against is the first step to managing risk effectively.
Okay, so let's switch gears and talk solutions. What are some practical things that professionals can do to protect themselves? Our research had some really good advice, right?
Absolutely. And the first thing, which people often overlook, is to talk to insurance professionals.
So you mean don't just try to figure out insurance on your own?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Professional liability insurance isn't one size fits all. What you need depends on what you do, the size of your business, the services you provide, and a lot of other things. A good insurance broker can help you figure out what your risks are and get the right policy. They can explain all the details and make sure you're covered, especially with all these new trends we've been talking about.
It's kind of like going to a doctor for a medical problem, right? You wouldn't try to diagnose and treat yourself, would you?
Not if I wanted to get better. And in the same way, you shouldn't try to handle insurance on your own, especially when the consequences of not having enough coverage can be so bad.
So talking to insurance experts is step one. What else can professionals do to protect themselves? We talked about the labor shortage before and how that can lead to more mistakes. So I'm guessing employee training is a big one?
You're exactly right. Investing in good employee training is more important now than ever. It's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about creating a culture where people know what they're doing and they take pride in their work. And that benefits everyone.
Right, because well-trained employees are less likely to make those expensive errors in the first place.
Exactly. And it's not just about training someone when they first start. Ongoing professional development, keeping skills sharp, staying updated on best practices. All of that is essential for managing risk and showing that you're committed to doing things right. Clients are more informed than ever, and they want to know they're working with the best.
So it's not just checking off a box, it's about making sure everyone is always learning and improving.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
We also talked about AI and how it's making professional liability even more complicated. Do you have any advice for professionals who are thinking about using AI?
AI tools have a lot of potential, but they're not a magic solution. Professionals need to be careful and think things through before jumping in.
Don't just start using AI without understanding it, right?
Exactly. It's super important to really investigate any AI system before you use it. You need to know how it works, what it can't do, and how much human oversight it needs. Remember, you're responsible for what your AI tools do, just like you're responsible for your employees.
It's like hiring a new team member. You wouldn't just throw them into a project without any training or supervision, would you?
That's a great analogy. And just like with any employee, you need to make sure your AI tools are doing their job right and that they're being used ethically and responsibly. That might mean setting clear rules for using AI, having ways to hold people accountable, and making sure that humans are still involved in making decisions.
So we've got talking to insurance experts, investing in employee training, and being cautious with AI. What else should professionals be thinking about with all these changing risks? I think we both know what's next. Cybersecurity.
You got it. Cybersecurity isn't just an IT issue anymore. It affects everything a professional does. And in 2025, with cyber attacks becoming more sophisticated and happening more often, having a solid cybersecurity plan is absolutely essential.
No argument there. But what does a solid cybersecurity plan even look like these days? It seems like the threats are changing all the time.
That's true. The landscape is always evolving. But some things are always important. First, you need to have strong security measures in place. Things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and keeping your software updated. These might seem basic, but they're your first line of defense.
It's like locking your doors and windows. It's not going to stop everything, but it makes it a lot harder to break in.
Exactly. But it's more than just the basics. Professionals also need to be proactive about protecting data. That means encrypting sensitive information, whether it's being sent or stored, having strict access controls, and having a plan for what to do if there's a data breach.
So it's not just about preventing attacks, it's also about minimizing the damage if an attack does happen.
Exactly. And don't forget about the human factor. Your employees are often the weakest link in your cybersecurity. It's crucial to train them regularly on cybersecurity best practices. Things like recognizing phishing scams, understanding social engineering tactics, and using good passwords.
Because humans are often the easiest targets for hackers, right? They play on our trust, our curiosity, our moments of bad judgment.
That's right. And cybercriminals are getting better and better at creating attacks that can trick even the most careful people. That's why ongoing training and awareness campaigns are so important. You need your employees to be your first line of defense.
Like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Very true. And when it comes to cybersecurity, that ounce of prevention can be what saves you from a disaster.
Cybersecurity is complicated. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you're not a tech person. Are there resources out there to help professionals figure this out?
Absolutely. There are a lot of great cybersecurity companies out there. They specialize in helping businesses find their weaknesses, put the right protections in place, and create plans for dealing with incidents.
So it's like with insurance professionals, sometimes you need to bring in the experts.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is constantly changing, and it's almost impossible for professionals to keep up on their own. Having someone you trust to guide you can make all the difference.
All right, so we've talked about insurance, employee training, AI, and cybersecurity. Is there anything else professionals should be thinking about with all of this?
Well, it's important to remember that all of these things are connected. For example, investing in employee training can help reduce errors, which can lower your risk of lawsuits.
Mhm.
But it can also make your organization less vulnerable to cyber attacks. It's not just about checking things off a list. It's about having a plan for managing risk that covers every part of your business.
It's about building a culture where everyone is aware of the risks and takes responsibility for protecting the business.
You got it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. But what does it all mean for our listeners? Why should they care about all of this?
Because when it comes to professional liability, the more you know, the better off you are. And staying informed is the best way to protect yourself, your business, and your livelihood. The things we've talked about today, social inflation, the labor crunch, AI, and cybersecurity, these are the forces shaping the future of risk in 2025 and beyond.
And by understanding those forces and taking steps to deal with them, professionals can reduce their chances of getting sued. And they can set themselves up for success in the long run.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not reactive. It's about making smart decisions that protect you and let you focus on what you're good at, serving your clients and growing your business.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into professional liability in 2025, we want to leave you with something to think about. We've been talking about all these changes in professional liability, the challenges in some ways to protect yourself. But as we wrap things up, here's a question. With social inflation changing the workforce technology that's always evolving and cybersecurity threats everywhere, what can you do today to make sure you and your business are safe going forward?
Are you really covered by your insurance? Are you investing in your team's skills and knowledge? Are you being careful and smart about using new technology like AI? And maybe most importantly, are you taking cybersecurity seriously?
These aren't just things to think about. They're real questions every professional needs to be asking themselves right now. The risks are out there, the stakes are high, and the people who are prepared and adapt are going to be the ones who succeed.
Don't wait until something bad happens to take action. Being proactive and informed is key. Professional liability is a moving target. The only way to stay ahead is to be vigilant, informed, and ready to change.
And the best way to protect yourself is to know what you're up against. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep working to be the best professional you can be. That's it for our deep dive into professional liability in 2025. We hope this was helpful and maybe even a little bit interesting. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe out there.